Sometimes you honestly just have to know how to play the game better instead of worrying too much about like constantly doing the right thing or like criticizing everybody else for doing the wrong thing or whatever. Because you can't always control your situation that you are currently existing within, but you can control how you move within that space. But you have to have like an accurate assessment of the landscape of your current reality in order to act accordingly, okay? I think people are like, you can sabotage things that otherwise could be used as a tool to help you to get ahead in some way because you are like nursing your ego and your wounds too much and stuff like that. So, say for example, somebody at your job like insults you or is harassing you and stuff like that, right? And but you make good money there and you know that you have a plan to get out and you just need to like save for a little while longer, okay? And say it's like, I don't know, for some reason or another, maybe it's a higher up and you just like can't do anything about it in the meantime. Obviously this is a case to case basis because sometimes it's bad enough and if you have another option it's better to leave. I'm just saying that like if you're pigeonholed in a situation where you have no other options, okay, and you just have to survive in an environment, okay, sometimes you just have to play the game, right? Sometimes you have to figure out how to manipulate somebody to figure out how that you can get them to like get off your back enough, even if that means like being fake, like a fake, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? You just have to be able to do whatever you need to survive. I think people are too sort of like stuck in like a black and white thinking about things, or like, oh, you know, I have to be authentic all the time, right? But that no almost like if you think that maybe this just like I'm just throwing out numbers, this is not literal or anything, but say like 30% of the population is always being authentic, then 70% isn't, you know, that doesn't mean that your intentions have to be impure. Like, obviously, keep your intentions pure, right? But you have to sort of like, play the game with the cards that you are currently given. Like, make the best out of a bad situation and play things smart instead of reactively. So it's not about being fake because you can't be authentic. It's about sometimes like playing a role until you're able to get to a better, more strategic position. Like you have to at least have enough awareness of the situation to know what power you have in a certain situation and like, you know what I mean? Like if you're backed in a corner, you have to figure out like, hey, is there any way that I can like, you know what I mean? Like the way that I was always almost seeing it is like if you're backed in a corner, you have to figure out how to make it so that whatever's like backing you in that corner lays off of you for long enough for you to get out, basically. So like for some of you, and like for some of you, say you're in like a toxic household, because I was, and I exhibited a fawn response, right, to get them to be, you know, the least abusive as possible, to be quite frank about it. Um, you know, and so, but they thought that I was being that way because I was stupid. But I was being that way so they would just leave me alone. Okay? So it's sort of like, no, I wasn't actually weak. No, I wasn't actually pathetic. No, I didn't actually have nothing to say. I just was very calm because I found a way to be serene and centered within, because I just had an awareness that like as long as I just have to get through this the best way I can, where they bother me the least until I can get the freak out of here. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm talking about. Is that yes, I could have crashed out. Yes, I could have been a bigger problem, or like always cried, always complaining. Yes, I would like cry to myself away, but I it's sometimes of like you have to play the long game, you know, especially if you are a good, pure hearted person. You're not always going to be privileged enough to be in a situation where you're around pure hearted, good people, right? And so, like, I think that a lot of people are trapping themselves because they're like surrounded by a bunch of people who are all being maliciously manipulative, and and they're just the only one being true and authentic and just like floundering in that regard. They're people pleasing because they think Like they're genuinely trying to just figure out how to get these people to be nicer to them, as opposed to just like figuring out by being strategic how to get those people to be the most sedated around you so that they can lay off your back so that you can focus on what you need to focus on so that you in the long term can get the freak out of there and never be around those people again. You know what I mean? And if you're too reactive, you can't do that. You know what I mean? It can if you're too reactive, it's too entertaining for them to keep bothering you. That you know what I mean? So like I don't know. It's just like you have to be more strategic. And it's not about invalidating your emotions or like, saying like, "Oh, I don't deserve to be treated that way." No, you don't deserve to be treated that way, but sometimes there's nothing you can do about it in the moment. And no, it's not worth going to jail, crashing out on people over stuff. You have to be more strategic than that if you want to like get out of a bad situation and improve your life. It's like I've seen stories too of say like a woman with like a child, okay, and then they're in a really toxic, abusive, like, like a really abusive household, right? So they literally like she has to still cook and clean for that man. She still has to like, pretend to be like that she still loves him, otherwise he will, you know what I mean? To sort of like temporarily you know, appease his whatever, right? Not because she thinks he deserves that, but because she needs him to be as sedated as possible in some way while she like is secretly saving up money, okay, for her to escape with her child. So do you think that that woman is weak for staying there in the meantime? No, no, she's doing what is the safest and like the smartest thing so that she's able to actually like more effectively plan and escape from a terrible situation, right? So it's the sort of thing is that I know people sometimes will like walk out on jobs where they have no backup job just because someday they get fed up. And like I get that that's like funny or whatever and it's like, "Oh, wow, you're so empowered for doing that." But is that smart to do? No. No, that's not smart to do. So you have to like move more strategically and that has nothing to do with invalidating your feelings and stuff like that, but you just have to be smarter than the person who is mistreating you. Okay? And oftentimes people who are mistreating you or who are doing things that are maliciously like again, like people who are narcissistic or whatever, their egos are so fragile that they're honestly like the easiest to play if you really think about it because their tells are so easy because their weaknesses are very like childish, because it's usually things like, oh, they always need validation from others. And so once you're aware, like, oh, that's their weakness, then you can take advantage of that to again. You know what I mean? Like, you have to think of like oh, that's so manipulative, but if somebody's like manipulating you anyway in a way that's like malicious and you were just trying to manipulate that person so you can get away from them and get into a better situation and like to protect yourself, you have to like get out of this thing of like, oh, this word is bad and anybody who does this word is terrible or whatever. Like no, it's about playing smart in a world that is unfair in the first place until you get a hand in you like that is in your favor. You know what I mean? And some like if you're like play cards or whatever, sometimes you have to be patient if you get handed like a messed up freaking like hand, okay? Sometimes you have to be slow and methodical and stuff like that. And obviously have a poker face and just be very patient and wait for an opening. And oftentimes if you're patient enough and calm enough, there like will be an opening, okay? But I've been in like multiple toxic households that I've had to escape from. Okay. I've been in like multiple like terrible mindsets, even within my own mind that I needed to escape from, you know. Um, and at a certain point, you have to like, I don't know, hold on. Like at a certain point, you have to just stop being frustrated and stop like just complaining about everything and figure out what you can do, regardless of how weird or outlandish or whatever. If it's like against your moral code to do certain things, you have to like genuinely assess like, is this actually going to hurt anybody if I do this? Or, you know what I mean? Is this like, because obviously don't do anything that hurts another person or anything like illegal or whatever. But, you know, sometimes to like save yourself, you have to like use people's like shitty tactics against them just temporarily in order for you to get to a better state of being in a better life.